Here's the question from today's quiz, and I do not feel as though I set you up properly for success on this one for a small but very, very important reason. So I'm not going to count it as a quiz. Instead, we'll turn it into some group work to clean up the next time we meet. I just wanted to run through why it's relatively straightforward, but you have to be set in the right way. Now, you might have started by saying, z is being supplied by x and y, and y and x are both coming from u and v. So you could write it something like this. The traditional way, though, is instead to just say u and v. You have u and v, and you're going to the same one, so you can have the arrows like this. So you would fill in this chart accordingly, but you really have to understand what this means. This means the partial of z with respect to u. So you're looking for all the paths that go from z all the way to u. And filling in the paths, it's not super challenging. You have your partial z with respect to y. You have your partial z with respect to x, dx, du, and dy, du. But the challenge came from figuring out how to take all of this and end up with an answer in terms of a, b, c, d, e, f, g, h, all the way to w. You're not going to use all of those, but some part of it. The challenge really is realizing, and this is where I felt bad, this is a u value and a u and a v value, not an x and a y. That's a u and a v. You're plugging in u and v, which generate your x and your y's, which then give you your z value. So when you're figuring this out, you need to write out z sub u, or partial z with respect to u, properly. And what that is going to be, if you're following this path, you're going to end up with dz, partial z, partial x, times partial dx, dx du. And many of you did write this, partial z, partial y, and dy du. The challenge was then figuring out how this filled in. And what you really have to write out, or you could write it a little differently, is that these are all in terms of u and v. So you could write it and say this is going to be fx, because z is the function f, fx xy, and then and then it's excuse me, going to be dx, so it's going to be x sub u in terms of u and v, plus f sub y in terms of x and y, and dy du is just going to be y sub u, u and v. Well, the key, which is why I felt bad again, this is so we know that u is equal to 4 and v is equal to 5. So you can start plugging in here, but you really only have these two. So how do you figure out these? Well, the idea is x is in terms of u and v. We know that x, we're given a whole bunch of values up here. So you could expand this even further, and you can say this is going to be fx. Well, what is x? Well, x is in terms of u and v. Y is in terms of u and v. I'm just writing this whole thing out. You're not normally going to have to write this whole thing out. Well, u and v are 4 and 5, plus f of y, x in terms of u and v, y in terms of u and v, and then y, u, 4, 5. Well, we know some of these values already. We know xu 4, 5 is e, so we know that this one is e. And then in terms of yu 4, 5, yu 4, 5 is p. So we have two of these already. The one other trick we have to do here is we have to actually evaluate these. Well, we know u and v are 4 and 5. So what is x 4, 5 going to be? Well, it tells us up here that x 4, 5 in the question we know is 2, and y 4, 5 is 3. So this is actually, so it's 2 and 3. So this is going to be fx at 2, 3, and it's going to be fy at 2, 3. And again, you go back up and look, and what do you see? You have f of 2, 3 is b, and f of y at fy 2, 3 is d. So it's b and d. So this right here is going to be b, and the e is still there, and then this is plus d times p. So your final answer for this, which is really zu 4, 5, it's going to be be plus dp. And again, it really hinges on the fact that you have to realize that 4 and 5 are u and v values, not x and y values. I mean, the giveaway really is that if you try to solve this, if you think that's an x value and a y value, you have to figure out what the u and v values are, but they don't give you enough information to disassemble that. All of these are equal to letters, not numbers, so you wouldn't be able to figure it out. So if you follow this through and plug it in the right place, it's not super complicated. That being said, it is really easy to pick the wrong values, so be very careful.